Welcome, everybody. This is the Amateur Fanboy Podcast interview. We haven't had one in a while. It's been a minute. Today we have Blogging the Boys' RJ Ochoa. RJ, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Chase. I should have been here a few weeks ago so that everybody knows. Chase is a great dude, very accommodating. My sincere apologies. Hope all is well with you. Glad to be hanging out, my man.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you about how'd that winter storm treat you? How's everything coming off of that?
Everything's good for me. My family, we had little spurts of power outages. We had nothing bad at all. But it just, it wrecks your schedule and stuff. I mean, we were just mildly inconvenienced. A lot of other people obviously had it a lot worse.
Right. Yeah, I was listening to your last podcast with Tony Casillas on my way here, and you brought that up, and I had to check in on you just to make sure everything's good. It's actually a good thing that we haven't gotten together in a few weeks because there's been a lot of things happening, and the first thing I'll start with is Carson Wentz is no longer in the division. Matthew Stafford is now an LA Ram. Basically, what I want to ask you is, how do you think? I mean, obviously, it should make the Cowboys even more urgent to get Daks signed because they would literally have the only solid franchise quarterback in that division right now, all things considered. I mean, how do you think the Eagles look after that? How do you think the Cowboys go forward with the news that now there's two new quarterbacks on two new teams?
I think that the Goff and Wentz trades are really interesting. I think some people say that they serve as cautionary tales, that the Rams and Eagles shouldn't have paid them, and look at what happened, et cetera. I think it was smart of them to pay them when they did, and I mean they were able to trade them, right? Like
Right.
like that's everyone's like number one concern is like, well, what happens if Dak sucks? I mean, well, Goff sucked and Wentz sucked, and those teams were able to move on, and yeah, they had to eat a little bit of dead money. I mean, not a little bit, but they were able, like the world didn't end, and they were still able to trade them and still able to get other things in return. And so you just have to be creative about it. And so, like, the more this drags on, the more obvious it becomes how uncreative the Cowboys are and how unwilling they are to be creative. And I mean, when they got their deals, that should have gotten this deal done 2 years ago, because I mean, this is, I mean, it's not this simple, but it really is just okay, what did he get? We'll give you a little bit more. Like it's not, like. I found some old Pokemon cards. My parents were going through a bunch of my old crap.
Yes.
And so like I was looking on like eBay like for how much they go for. And so like if I'm going to sell them, it's like, okay, well that's how much they go for. So like that's
Right.
how much I need to sell them for. And like it's a really simple process that they have spent over 2 years trying to overcomplicate.
Yeah, and I was actually the part that right before I stopped, you were talking about the Russell Wilson deal, and really when you're talking about it, everyone wants to bring up Russell Wilson to the Cowboys now. If they had just given Dak Russell Wilson money when they had the chance to give him Russell Wilson money, we would have Russell Wilson on a younger Russell Wilson right now. It's hitting its peak right now, and we wouldn't even be, doing this game of musical chairs, and it's really frustrating. But so you wrote an article, and it was actually the one I was going to bring up when I was going to have you on a couple weeks ago. The three most predictable things that the Cowboys will do this offseason, and it seems like they're already about to do one. It's franchising Dak, and then the other two, we obviously know that we're probably going to try to get a corner. That's probably where the 10 pick's going to be spent. But it is frustrating, to your point, that we do not seem to want to spend the money on free agents. Like Rashad Breeland was one you brought up in an article the other day. Explain to me why the Cowboys seem to just want to bargain Ben Hunt and not go after and not start to go all in, but not make the move that could possibly put that defense over the top.
I think, it's funny that corner is the position you bring up. They got burned. And like, that's even like a bad way to put it, but they think they got burned by Brandon Carr in 2012. And I would maintain that Brandon Carr was a serviceable player for them. He just didn't, get a lot of interceptions. And so, I mean, they're afraid of that. And I get that. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's like, you ever have like you go to the movies once and like, it's like an awful experience. The popcorn sucks, the chairs are like, I'm never going back to this movie theater again. Like they're never going back to that movie theater. Like that's just the way they want to operate. And I mean, there is like logic and merit to saying, okay, we want to like find our core players in the draft. We want to extend them. But nothing they do makes like it's like you ever like make dinner and you start off and you're like, okay, I'm gonna make chicken and like I'm gonna make some baked chicken with some like asparagus and corn. And then you start like you preheat the oven. You're like, oh crap, I didn't take the chicken out this morning. So it's like, well, I'll make spaghetti. And then it's like, well, I'll make the corn because I already like have it, boiling or whatever. But asparagus isn't gonna work. So like, let's make some garlic bread because I had the oven preheated or whatever. And like that's how they are. Like none of their objectives line up with one another. It would make sense if they didn't like free agency, if they were constantly extending all of their players as soon as they could. But Dak is an example of how they didn't. I mean, like people forget this. They let Amari hit free agency last year. Like that actually happened. He was on the open market. They let that. It worked out for them. But I mean, so they just kind of like they're the dude who doesn't study for any test, and some guys don't study for any test and show up and like still ace it or pass it or whatever, and they just like fail them all, like every now and then, like I've been there, and then you study for one test and then you go take the test. You're like, oh, this is super easy. Like I'm gonna do this all the time. Like I'm gonna study because like it's easier when you study, and they have those successes, but then they don't repeat that, and so. I think it's a combination of that, and I think it's a combination of and this isn't a bad thing, but they are very arrogant, and they think like we have the Cowboys brand, we know what we're doing, and the world, the NFL world, and the world in general has caught up to them. And like, have you ever seen the Third Mighty Ducks movie?
I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the third one. No.
So in the third one, they go to this like prep high school. And they're playing the varsity team, and they're like getting their ass kicked because it's the varsity team, whatever. And the coach is telling them, he tells like the main guy, he's like, none of your little duck tricks are gonna work here anymore because like you're playing big boy hockey or whatever.
Yeah.
And like that's what it is. Like they have these little duck tricks that were really cute and worked once upon a time, but like it's not that way anymore. And you can try as much as you want, but like you got to get some new tricks.
Yeah, the flying V, right?
Right. Yeah, like and in that scene, like the flying V gets crushed because it's a little duck trick. And like the flying V to them is like, we're the Cowboys, the brand, whatever. Like nobody cares about that anymore because the NFL gives a brand to everybody.
Yeah. And Russell Wilson's not helping by putting the Cowboys in, I want to go to these 4 teams, this 3 teams, and then gather the Cowboys in there. Oh yeah, no, that helps. Thanks a lot, Russell. We appreciate it. So the draft is about month and a half away, almost 2 months away. So I know you're not a huge, you follow the Cowboys a lot, you dissect them, but I'm not sure you're as big into draft as maybe, prospects as other guys, but I do want to get your thoughts on how do you think the Cowboys should attack this coming draft with, especially, obviously we hope to get Dak signed before the draft, which would help matters a lot, but if they don't, then you're opening a can of worms that you really don't want to open up, the possible taking a QB at 10 and, all the other options. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. There are a lot of great people that cover the draft in a deeper sense than I do. And so that we have a lot of people like that at Blog on the Boys. So that is not me, but we do have that work available to people.
You do.
So I know people get exhausted with this, but like it does all come back to Dak because like in a perfect world, pick a guy, pick your quarterback, Trey Lance, whoever falls to 10, because what you want is whether it's the Bears or somebody who's floating behind you that says we can go up to 10. In a perfect world, if you're the Cowboys, you trade down, you pick up assets, you pick up more draft capital, you're still able to get somebody you like in the first round. Maybe it's a lot of people are a little bit more down on like J.C. Horn. You still get a legitimate corner prospect. So overall, it's a win-win-win. But if you're sitting at that 10 spot and whatever arbitrary quarterback falls to you and the Bears, let's use that hypothetical, want him, well, what's going to happen with Dak? Like, are you going to forfeit the opportunity that has like, you don't want to be picking in the top 10 next year? Like, are you like, what are you going to do? And if you draft him, now you're deciding that like you're moving on from Dak Prescott. And so like, that's a really tense moment to, and I would hope that they would have that decision made. And if they make that decision, then make it. Like, make the decision and say, we're going to move on from Dak Prescott. I think that's a dumb decision, But like living in this in between is
Yeah.
really hurting your overall cause because nobody knows what you're going to do. And I know you asked about the draft, but like that applies to free agency.
Yeah.
Like say you're in Ndamukong Suh and it's, can I go back to Tampa Bay? Or like, I want to go to Dallas. Sue's been connected to the Cowboys a million times, but I don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. Why would I risk everything when it's such a huge question mark? And so assuming all of the crap is restored for them, I mean, a trade back situation is great. I don't think they can go wrong with any of the heavy mock guys. I think, Rashawn Slater, Penei Sewell, Patrick Surtain, Caleb Farley, any one of those dudes I think improves them. I would personally probably rather them lean on cornerback help. I mean, they need that's more than just depth at this point. Whatever tackle you draft, while they will be playing a lot soon, is not starting for you day one. Not that your corner's starting, but he's playing a lot more legitimate snaps.
Yeah, and that's Mike and I have had a couple mock drafts, and he keeps bringing up offensive tackle, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to be mad if we do it, but like corner, we have a position of need right now. Offensive tackle, I know Tyron Smith's aging and Lyle Collins' injury last year, but we have depth there. That's not a necessity. I think corner is more necessary right now. So I would agree that I would hope they would lean towards corner if they don't trade down, or God forbid, take a quarterback because they can't figure out Dak's contract. Let's go back to Dak a little bit. Russell Wilson has obviously been linked to the Cowboys. I heard something today from Michael Silver. I think that now they're going to start listening to offers. I'm not sure how true that is or not, but let's say, and there's a lot of reasons why the Seahawks probably won't trade Wilson this year, but let's say it becomes more feasible and they think about it and the Cowboys have a chance at it. Do you think that's reasonable? Obviously, with draft capital, probably not. But if the Cowboys are so hell-bent on winning this contract with Dak, do you think that they would pull the trigger on that?
Let me say, I love Russell Wilson. He's so awesome. I'm a huge fan. He's my favorite non-Cowboy in the NFL. He is the only non-Cowboy in the NFL whose jersey I own. Like, I love Russell Wilson. I've loved him from day one. I loved all the Go Hawk stuff. And he is a lot of fun. And I really am excited to see the rest of his career, wherever it is. I mean, and I think it would be really interesting to see him go to somewhere like Chicago. Because I kind of want to see this, like, let Russell, like people say like Russ Cook, but like I want to see let Russell be like the star. Like that's like, you ever like I don't know what like a good example is, but like when a TV show has like a spinoff and you're like, oh great, like I would love to see that character's story. Like that's how I feel about Russell Wilson. I want to see that spinoff. And so all that being said, I am terrified that this could happen, and it would be fun. And I do think that is the least awful, non-Dak Prescott path for the Cowboys, but I still think it's a incredibly irresponsible one, because while I maintain that Russell is a superior quarterback to Dak Prescott in the here and now, I don't think that upgrade is worth the assets it's going to cost. And I think what's more is that, so Russell's whole MO here is, I want to go be the star. I want to go be the center of attention. Okay, cool. So like, in this hypothetical, we're putting him at the center of the Dallas Cowboys, which is like a place that Jalen Smith has occupied, at least in his mind, for a long time. And so it's like soon enough, like people look at this and say, well, he's only getting paid $35 million per year. Like you mentioned it earlier, like that deal is much more, palatable for the Cowboys. It's going to be no time before Russell wants an extension. Yep. And so now you've traded all these assets, and then soon enough, you're going to have to pay him. And what's more, it's kind of like Laramie Tunsil when he got traded to Houston. Like, if you think that Dak has all the leverage now, Russ is going to have even more, because Russ is going to be able to say, like, you traded all this for me, but you're going to do whatever I want because I'm the guy that you went out and got. And so it would be cool for like 3 weeks, and then it would be terrible in all likelihood.
I would agree 100%. I know we talk Cowboys here, and this is what we're here to talk about, but I kind of want to talk about Deshaun Watson a little bit too, because I keep hearing rumors that he'll sit all year long, which I don't find feasible. I mean, we saw how that worked out with Melvin Gordon and Le'Veon Bell. But obviously the Texans have to trade him before the draft. I mean, I think that's probably what's more than likely will happen. Now, Deshaun Watson, we probably are not going to be able to feasibly get him, considering one, he has more money allocated to him. Two, do you think the Texans are really going to trade in the same state to a team that technically considers them a rival? But where do you think Deshaun Watson realistically could end up when he is traded?
I think it's tough. I think Carolina has a lot of interesting assets, and I think that the Texans need some. I think they need to do some goodwill. I think that's why they cut JJ Watt when they very clearly could have traded him based on the contract that the Cardinals gave him. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the Texans need a huge boost of we are good guys. And so sending him to Carolina would be awesome. Bit of a homecoming, obviously, with the Clemson factor. I think San Francisco would be awesome for Deshaun with Kyle Shanahan. I think the Jets would theoretically be something that Deshaun would want. And I think the place, I don't think they can trade him to Miami, because I think if they trade him to Miami, they're the biggest fools in the world, right? Like, they traded for Laramie Tunsil specifically to protect Deshaun Watson. And if they trade him and acquire, and a big piece of that acquisition would be the pick that the Dolphins own that originally belonged to the Texans. I mean, it just, you can't come back from that. You know what I mean? It's
100%.
You can't do that. And so I think Carolina is probably the front runner for me. And I think that would be fun. That's the opposite conference. Although, and I do think this is really fascinating. If the 17th game does happen the way that it is being reported that it's going to happen this season, if it's going to be instituted starting this season, the scheduling is that each division plays a division from the opposite conference. You play the same team that you finish in the same place as. For example, the NFC East would play the AFC East this season, and the Cowboys finished in third place, and so did the Patriots. So that would be their 17th game. Incidentally, just by the way things went last season.
Oh, I can tell where this is going. I think
whenever you trade a player, you're like, well, let's trade him to the opposite conference. So we only have to see him once every 4 years, whatever. And ideally, you trade him to a team you just played last year, so you don't have to see him for a really long time. But amazingly, the Texans play the Panthers this year. And if I was a Panthers fan, I would be devastated if the only reason that we did not get Deshaun Watson was because this crazy 17th game thing that just is starting this year. So that would be tough to take, but Carolina is my favorite in spite of that.
Yeah, I would say Carolina and the Bears are the teams that stick out for me, so I would definitely agree with that. RJ, I think that's it. I think that's all I got for you. I appreciate you coming on. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find your work at and where they can find you on Twitter and all the good social medias?
Sure. I'm on social media at RJ Ochoa. I make it nice and simple. Blogontheboys.com. You mentioned it. We talk about the Dallas Cowboys all the time because we're obsessed with mediocrity. And we have a podcast network. Just search for Blogging the Boys. We have a YouTube channel, so we have all sorts of stuff. Obviously, we're all on Dak Watch and free agency coming up, the draft. Surely the Cowboys are going to disappoint us, but before they do, they haven't yet. So we can at least have a little bit of hope.
Yeah, we can at least have hope and keep hope alive. RJ, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it, man. Have a great day.
Anytime, my dude. You too.
Thank you.